I'm Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert, and I'm at one of my favorite times of the day, and that is to be able to talk to somebody who's a super amazingly cool human about the leader that he is living his values. Like, how much better could life be? I don't know. So, Steve Rodgers, I'm glad you joined me.
Hey, thank you, Mitchell. Always nice to see you and spend time with you. Back from my book days all the way till now.
No kidding. By the way, I'm just going to say
No, I meant,
AV
but you as the
Principles.
producer, you don't have to promote my book. I was just saying you as my book publisher. So not the book itself, but you as a phenomenal publisher. So that's our meeting. All these calls we got to have originally on you interviewing me and connecting, and so didn't mean to do a book push there at the beginning. So let's scratch that.
Happy to do that. No, it's really okay. I love that. Yeah, and we're both part of the Marshall Goldsmith 100 Coaches organization. So happy to share that with you as well.
That's right. Another great group for sure.
So, Steve, how I like to start this is an open-ended softball question. And hi, Steve Rodgers. Besides having the same name as Captain America, hi, Steve Rodgers. Who are you?
Yeah, I used to get the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood before Captain America became so popular with all the Marvel movies. So I said, either one are fine, but I'll do Captain America all day. Anyway, who am I? Well, I always resonated with the wording and the descriptions that Wayne Dyer used a lot, and it just resonated with me. And I feel it identifies myself with that as well, is that I am a spiritual being having a human experience. So that's my first identity. I really am the spiritual being having a human experience. And in that human experience, I'm a husband of 32 years to my wife, and I'm a father and a grandfather, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a lover of life, and I'm a traveler, and I am a curious person. I'm a positive person. I'm very optimistic. I'm one of those everything happens for a reason kind of guys, and I'm always looking for what the reason is. And I'm a guy that's always into evolving in all areas of my life. So I'm hungry to evolve, which first I have to figure out what I'm evolving from and to. And sometimes that's just in being, simply being in the moment. I'm studying a lot of the Tao right now, of the ancient Chinese teachings of the Tao, and I resonate a lot with that. So sometimes it's not about doing, it really is just about being. So in my evolution of my prior life of climb, and achieve, that was all fine and wonderful. And now, in addition to that, it really is in a state of beingness. So those are some of the descriptors I would use of who I am.
That's interesting. So, Steve, where are you evolving now?
I'm evolving into more of my spiritual being having a human experience. And what I mean by that is that all things that come my way and my work with my clients, relationship with my wife, my grandkids, all the things I mentioned before, where I'm evolving to right now is really looking for the spiritual higher meaning in those relationships. And in new relationships that I'm forming with people that I don't know, that I'm meeting, I'm digging deep to find out where the spiritual connection or resonance might be in those relationships, that I can feel more compelled to want to then learn more from that person or from that relationship. And if it's not in a situation, I might have friends, family, etc., that are wonderful and great and cool, and I love them. But I really am, as I'm getting into my later years in life, and I'm still a pretty young, I'll be 60 in November. I'm still a pretty young 60. I'm more identifying and evolving to my time, where it's being spent, my time and how it's being utilized. And even though I'm being present in the present moment, I'm really digging into evolving into, if it's not connected to some sense of a spiritualness that I understand and know and connect with in that moment, then I'm not giving as much time to things or people as I used to.
So what makes, I love that thought process. What makes somebody worthy of spending time with them?
Well, and it's not so much the worthy word, but I know it may come across that, because I know that sounds egotistical, and I'm all about identifying ego versus Iggy, that I'm sure we'll get into talking about. But the
Well, that's,
worthiness,
by the way, I kind of was sort of throwing up that
yeah,
softball,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Well, everybody's worthy. Clearly, every human being on the planet is worthy. So
Thank you.
but I can't serve every person on the planet. I can't be in one-on-one relationship with every person on the planet. And I can't be in one-on-one deep meeting relationships with all the people that I even know in my life. So since I only have so many times for a Zoom call or a meeting or an event or a client, I really have to ask myself, number one, do I enjoy being around them? And if I don't, why? And if I don't, and the why is because they're sandpaper to my soul, I usually know that's when God is trying to help me learn and teach myself the most. But sometimes I just don't have the capacity for a little bit more sandpaper to the soul because I'm still digesting the sandpaper to the soul that I'm currently dealing with. So when somebody falls into that category, that it's more sandpaper to my soul than I'm able to absorb and put into a spiritual context of appreciation, I realize it's not fair to them or not fair to me to say yes to something I shouldn't be saying yes to.
Dude, I don't think I've ever had this conversation, certainly not with you, but with anyone. Very powerful. I'm gonna put that on the side for a second. But do you have a name for this? Like sandpaper to the soul? Are those? Let me paraphrase this. Are those people who you're just questioning why you said yes, or questioning whether or not you should say yes, or whether or not it should be a no? Is that a fair?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair assessment. And there are some people that are even way, way more obvious that they so go against the grain of my beliefs in either belief about humanity, belief about spirituality, belief about politics, belief about what's right or wrong from my perspective. And that's just perspective. If it's somebody that's just so like fingers on a chalkboard, I realize that's like one of my biggest tests for acceptance, for gratitude, for forgiveness. And I have some of those people in my life, and one or two of them are actually family members that that I have to realize, okay, this is a family member. I will always have this person as a family member. And just because they're a family member doesn't mean they can't be an irritant to my way of seeing life. So in that, I realize there's certain things I'm obligated to do whether I want to or not. However, that being said, there are times in relationships with family members, I have distanced myself from the time and commitment that I give to that relationship versus what I used to do. In always giving. Now I give to a respectful level and family appreciation level, but I don't keep trying to fix something that may not ever be fixed, even though I continue to attempt in my own ways. So, but I guess the biggest thing when you're to your question is sandpaper to the soul for me is I realized in the early days where I was just in avoidance over it. If someone was an irritant to me or somebody was something I said yes to and I regretted saying yes to it, I always just went ahead and did it anyway, or I accepted it anyway, or I swallowed my viewpoint or my values on it anyway to make that other person feel better or to feel accepted. And I realized that there's a fine line between love and acceptance and also codependency and enabling others. And it's a very fine line that I think all of us have to figure out ourselves for where that is. But in my life, there are many times that I've enabled or been in codependent relationships with others that were not serving them and they were not serving me. And I was fine with it not serving me because I thought I was strong enough and deep enough and spiritual enough that I was okay to get the short end of the stick in the relationship of the emotional, mental, spiritual, monetary, whatever it might be, relationship that existed, because it was okay if I got less and someone else got more. So that frame of spirituality and how I viewed that before has shifted. And so the evolution of my consciousness of what I believe is fair and acceptable is always an evolution and transitioning and changing.
What's the opposite of sandpaper to the soul?
It's music to the ears that you can listen to continually. It's just that person or that environment or that situation that you can always just relish their word, their silence, their energy, their knowledge, their aura, So it's, I mean, there are certain people like that we just know they're always a treat and a pleasure to be around. And they are just like music to your ears, that they just resonate on the same frequency that you resonate on. And you realize that even when you're not resonating, there's still such a respect and such a love there that it's just kind of timeless.
You know, it's so funny. I check sandpapertothesoul.com. That's available for, you know, for a regular price. And I checked musictotheyears.com, and it's available, but it's available for 10,000. But I think it feels like for me, what I'm hearing you say is the people you want to surround yourself with, the playground you want to play in, are those people who you just resonate with.
Yeah, who I resonate with and who I can learn from and who I can feel in sync and harmony with, and collaborating something in joy, something in knowledge, something in their evolution and mine. And then sometimes that's in business. Sometimes that's collaborative in creating business opportunities that I help with people in consulting or in a startup, or they're helping me my business so that I'm using them as a vendor type relationship, or somebody who's helping me in my business grow. Those are the kinds of relationships that I spend a lot of time with after becoming an entrepreneur and getting out of corporate America many years ago, where a lot of times those choices were made for me. And for anybody that might be listening that's in corporate America or in a structured company that's very, very hierarchy and how it works, I learned an immense amount from that, you know, evolving from, you know, small companies to big companies to then Prudential, which was very corporate and structured, and then Berkshire Hathaway, which was also very layered and very corporate, all respectable brands. But those ecosystems sometimes made me dilute my values or dilute my feel of right and wrong or just or unjust at the time, for sake of the higher empire, or for sake of keeping my job, or for sake of not pissing off a boss, or for sake of doing what was politically correct. And I realized in the early days, I did more of that, and it did actually help me accelerate in much of my career. And there's part of that I'm proud of, and there's part of it that I'm not. So it was part of the game and the playground that I played on at the time. When you know, whether you're in football, baseball, entrepreneurship, corporate America, solo entrepreneur, whatever it might be, there's always rules to the game that we get to play and be a part of. And sometimes we get to rewrite them, but sometimes the rules are so embedded in stone in certain ecosystems, it's very hard to bend those at times. And so you have to figure out who's going to bend you or the structure. And sometimes that's why people leave structures, as I left, even though it was a great, rewarding career for many years. I became so that I was the outcast of the environment in which I existed. And I was okay with that, because my internal drive for nourishment in other ways with my soul or with my purpose or with my meaning were more important to me than making decisions to please others and keeping my title and my paycheck.
When did that happen for you? Like, when did you realize that what was more important is you getting excited, you being focused on, what's the right word? More of music to the ears and sandpaper to the soul.
Yeah, it was in probably 2000. It started in early days of 2000, but it really came to light in 2007 and 8 in the real estate business. I was the CEO of a very, very large real estate company, and the real estate market was really starting to shift and change then. And I had been through quite a few different real estate markets in previous years, whether it was the Gulf War in '94 or it was September 11th in the early 2000s. And then, 2008, many remember, that was the mortgage meltdown crash and what almost brought down the world in a lot of different ways. And so in that time period, there was a lot of stuff happening. I called it adult musical chairs. When you're in organizations that people are starting to cut and consolidate and cut and consolidate, and you're having to play games and, who's fired next, who's not fired next, who you're going to use up to the last minute before you fire them for their information or what they can do. And then you have to chop them the next day. It's like adult musical chairs. It's definitely a tactical thing that you are required to do when you're not only declining and trying to cut and save, but also when you're building. It's more fun when you're building, because when you're building and you're collecting more chairs and more people and you're building things and you're making sure that they fit into certain things on, seats on the bus, as Collins says in his good to great book, getting people on the bus and the right seats on the bus. But at that time, 2008-9, it was really high pressure. And we closed almost half of our company that was the 5th largest real estate company in the nation. And we had been promised that when you had Warren Buffett kind of money, you could weather the storm and you never had to worry about that kind of stuff. Well, Warren did make those daily decisions, but that became very apparent that was not the case. So I realized either I could keep speaking up and speaking out about things that I thought were unjust or unreal during a time that the market was still circling, and I could realize I could be the next chopping block on the table, even though as the CEO. That was when I really started questioning what else is there that I want to be doing in my life, versus being the CEO of a Warren Buffett large company that most people work a lifetime to achieve, which I did as well. So at that time, I'd been at the top seat and realized I didn't know that I really wanted it. I didn't want to exchange what I was going to have to do to keep it. So I then at that time chose to do something else. And the other thing that changed that is that I had a calling internally about this higher purpose thing that I'd been ignoring for a while. And when you ignore it, you keep getting the tap, and you keep getting the tap on the shoulder. And at that time, it was becoming like bricks upside the head and hammers upside the head versus taps on the shoulder. So I realized that my higher power was pulling me to do something else.
So one of the way you've manifested your higher power is by the coaching you do today. And give me what's the characteristic of like who you work with and why they're music to your ears?
Well, I've been, interestingly, in the last year or two, pulled in more people that are resonating with me that are 30 and 30 plus age groups, that are technology type companies that are more in that want to change the world kind of mentality with tech and with tech startups. And some of them are, seasoned tech startups, meaning they've 2 or 3 into the tech startup space, but they're in other rounds of funding, who want, like the lack of better words, the older seasoned guy in the room who understands how to scale and grow and has a few gray hairs to prove it, and also has the chops to be able to help them grow these new models. And so they're interesting that many of them are spiritually driven, meaning that they like have meditation and yoga stuff inside their companies. Their employee benefits are like very vast about time of contribution to causes or healthcare stuff for their families, so their models really exist in a very cool collaborative type environment that I'm very intrigued by. And I'm learning a lot from the blockchain space to Web 3.0 to taking traditional real estate and having it be sold in the DAO of stuff that exists in the blockchain. So there's a lot of stuff that I didn't even understand a year ago that I'm playing in that's really fun. In addition to that, I've had the same clients for 5 or 6 years since I started my consulting company. And I'm more of a consultant than I am a coach, meaning that I act a lot of times as an outsourced COO, an outsourced VP of operations, an outsourced business development guy. So I do some executive coaching and some entrepreneurial coaching, but I'm more of a guy that they bring in to be part of an exec team in strategy, implementation, growth, scaling new business models, creating multiple streams of revenue, because that's what I did for many years in the real estate space. And I realized that just translated over into all different walks of life. Business is business, no matter what you do. So I realized that I could be Switzerland and still have fun with types of people that I resonated with that fit the description we talked about earlier, that are purpose driven, that are really giving, that are really concerned about others. They have a sense of servant leadership. They are doing stuff that creates some kind of good product or service that's going to better the planet in some way through their policies, services, or products. And they seem to be good humans that I resonate with. And they do what they say they're going to do. And it's a pleasure to work with them. So that's kind of been a fun run.
Steve, it's so funny. I was just going to ask you your top 3 values. And before I asked you, you just articulated them. Servant leadership, high level of integrity, intent and commitment to do the right thing. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad you picked that up so astutely there, as you always do.
Well, I was like, okay, next question. So by the way, this is me stalling for the next question, right? And I was like, that's the question. Like, wait, he just said that. I can't ask that question. He just said that. So I'm going to ask you a question that you didn't mention. So I did something really interesting recently. And that is, I did a poll 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn. And the poll was, how many people have an accountability coach? Do you do it yourself? Is it a coach? Is it a family member? Or do you not care about accountability? When the numbers came back, Steve, that said 61% said that they are accountable to themselves, that they do it themselves. I kind of said, okay, I asked the wrong question. So I did another poll, just wrapping up now. And it was, for the people that are in your life, by the way, you said this is the sandpaper to the soul. For the people who are in your life, what percent of time do they actually say what they're going to do and do what they say? 25, 50, 75, or 100? Okay, this is what shocked me. So 61% said they were self-accountable. And for the people in your network, for those people who responded, we had over 100 people respond. Only 10% of the people in their network have integrity 100% of the time.
Only 10% of the people in their network that they are working with or that they affiliate with are
that they are. So the question was, for the people you work with, people are part of your existence.
Okay.
What percentage of the time do they actually say what they do and do what they say?
Oh, I see.
And 50% said it was either at 50% or 25% of the time they actually did it. Only 10% of the people who said, hey, 100% of the time they deliver what they say they're going to deliver.
Interesting. That is very interesting. So what was your then immediate takeaway from that as a good executive coach and entrepreneur that you are? Were you surprised by those answers?
I was shocked. And by the way, that's why I asked you the question, but I'll give you my take, but I'm still working on, I'm in the middle of writing up what's next and what does that mean? And the only thing I could truly think about is we as humans can self-justify many different things, right? So in the old days, if we were in a village and we needed to hunt to live, we couldn't justify, I don't have to worry about hunting today. We could just eat twice as much tomorrow, because that doesn't really work that way. The thing is, what often happens, and one of the things I do is I have this thing for Credibility Nation. I have this thing called Accountability Mondays, and I don't get as many people showing up. I mean, a small percentage of the community shows up. I'm like, why do people not come? And it's because they're of this belief that they really are accountable today. But then when they don't actually, the truth is, I'm not sure that people put two and two together. Right? If you're accountable to yourself and everyone in the world thinks that only 10% of people are 100% accountable, doesn't that mean that you're not really accountable to yourself? And so that I have to figure out how best to explain. And is that important to you? Right? Is it important, like for you, when I hear your values, you want to be surrounding yourself with people who have really absolute integrity? Well, the survey is saying that, hey, it's okay to surround ourselves. At least 50% of people in our network have only 50% integrity, and that's okay. And for some odd reason, people think that's okay. How does that resonate to you?
Well, a couple of things there. Many things resonate with me. I'm a big believer in accountability, only because when I started getting a business coach, I think I had my first business coach when I was 26 years old. And I was in just evolving into real estate management in the time out of sales. And it was in a business setting where real estate coaching was very big. I think real estate was one of the early industries that really adopted coaching early on. So for me, having a coach, I always thought I was accountable to myself, but I was only accountable to myself up until the pain point of being accountable was so difficult that I decided to be accountable to something else. So when I hired a coach and I laid down the framework of what I want to stay accountable to, the coach made me go here where I would sometimes only go here. So I realized that my level of accountability just kept increasing, and then my productivity or outcome of the categories in which I was focused on. So I do believe in accountability, and I think we as humans avoid pain. I think we also avoid things that don't make us look in the best light. And I think we, as humans, myself included, I overcommit and sometimes think I can do more than I can in a day or a week. And so sometimes my inability to get done what I thought I could do or commit to what I said I was going to do is something that I don't want to always have light shed on. So I think as humans, we shy away from things that are going to point out something we already possibly feel badly about ourselves about anyway, and having that heightened by somebody else, because people always say, there's no one that can be harder on myself than myself. Well, I don't believe that's true. I believe that somebody who loves and respects and knows what you're doing can be harder on you than you are in a more constructive, positive way that's going to get outcome versus just shame. So those are some thoughts I have about it.
Thank you. By the way, beautiful aha moment I got. It was simply because what happens week over week, if I keep track of what I said last week and what I'm going to do this week, like this particular week was like, oh, wait a second. I know I did some of what I said I'd do last week, but in terms of what I'm doing this week, it's the same stuff, right? And I'm like, wait, but I felt bad, but I'm like, that's okay, Mitchell. If you finish it and get it done, you could move on. If it's still important, you still need to focus on it. And I got a lot of other stuff done, but it was interesting that my brain allowed me to justify.
Yeah, and our brain does that. I mean, our brain continually works. Once we have a belief of a truth, whether it's true or not, in the reality of the facts, once we believe something is true, our mind does everything possible, including the ego, to prove that it's true, and will alleviate other information that might negate it, and it will take information only that potentially verifies that truth that we have. I mean, I see that happening all the time. I constantly notice that very heavily in the political arena, especially, over the last few years where it's gotten even more polarized, is making sure that I was constantly going back and looking at two views, and sometimes you realize you were getting news from two different planets. But it was the same news story looked at very different ways with very different facts, which is fascinating to me, because truth really is something that does usually have fact and proven method around it. That being said, in our human nature and in our soul's nature and in what we believe to be true, that is not necessary.
Hey, is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
I think maybe
besides maybe where do people buy your cool book?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No, we don't do that. I guess for me, the question would be on your integrity, on your values as a leader, on me starting out saying that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I think the question might be, how do you stay accountable to those type qualities that are not like sales metrics, or how many calls that I made, or what was my P&L looking like this month? How do you have a P&L on your credibility? How do you have a P&L on your integrity? How do you have a P&L on your values?
That's by the way, I'm going to say I love that question. Thank you for asking it. Do you want me to ask it again, or can you run with it?
I guess I'll roll with it. Well, I was thinking about that in a way because I do love accountability. And I remember in the early days when I had a coach, it was always geared towards what sales, what recruits I could get. Did we hit our sales goals? My time management, my task of the week. And as I started evolving in my own desire for getting better in certain categories, I was very hungry to be held accountable with coaches, because I'm a guy that barely graduated high school. I mean, I made it through, but I barely made it through high school. And I went through maybe 2.5, 3 years of college at different times and never got a college degree. I mean, I moved out of my house when I was 17 years old, and I was trying to figure out how to piece together to have income to even be able to go to college. So I never finished college. So when I got into the world of business, focused learning with coaching was crucial for me. And I realized when I evolved from coaching just about my skills and my task and my work, I started seeking out coaches in later years that also had it for my lifestyle, for my family, for my values, for my spirituality. And so those coaches helped me to find ways to stay accountable to what I said I was going to do within my family, within my relationships, within my word, my truth. And so I found that is actually trackable and measurable, and it's quantitative in a way that's not as easy as how many calls did you make and how many sales did you convert, as it is, did you, always follow your word, and did you stay in integrity, and are you living your values every day as a leader? That's a little bit more subjective and objective, but it's still possible to track and measure it. And I found ways to do that was not by keeping myself accountable to that, but I did in the early days have to have other people help me stay accountable to that and hold mirrors up to me, because the mirrors became great reflectors where I did not want to always see truth, where I was saying I was following stuff, but I always wasn't really doing that.
That was the early days. How about now?
Now I'm still human, of course, and I still absolutely have days that I don't follow. I wouldn't say follow my values, but I don't always follow the accountability of my discipline to the importance of my spirituality at the level that I want it to on every day. It's way, way, way bigger in my life than it's ever been, but it still is. There's still a void for it, that my accountability of staying, tracking, and measure to that, those practices and that commitment is still not there. And I actually hired last year. I actually had a coach who had been a monk for 16 years and got out of the monkhood, and he's been living a civilian life for about 10 or 12 years and runs yoga studios and different things. But he's got a very interesting perspective because he became an entrepreneurial businessman, but had been, talk about a disciplined person who every day had to live as a monk in, and I'm not looking to go live as a monk, but I do like the discipline and the accountability that it takes to be in spiritual practice with what it is you say you believe. So it was a very eye-opening year of coaching. So that's an example of evolving to try and level up the game.
I love that. Well, Steve, thank you so much for sharing and being open, and this was very insightful. It was a really good session. If people were interested in reaching out to you, what's the best way they should do that?
Yeah, probably my website's the easiest way. I've got two of them. One is, much more heavily business related. It's called thealchemyadvisors.com, because the name of my company is Alchemy Advisors. So thealchemyadvisors.com. And then I have a personal site, which is also business related, but it's got more of my personal beliefs on there as well. And that's steverodgers.net. And Rodgers has a D in it. I also have a podcast show that I do start since earlier in the year, and that's the Alchemy of Business show. And that you can find that on the site, or it's also on iTunes or, Roku or YouTube, wherever it might be. So I was glad to have you on that as well. And that was a fun episode to do. So hopefully your listeners will listen in on you on my show that was in that stream somewhere.
Oh, it's a great, oh my goodness. What a great interview. You're a great interviewer as well. And I appreciate that. And so, Steve, thank you so much. And listen, if you're still here, this is now time to spread some cred dust. So click on the like button, write the comment that really appealed to you most, and share with your friends. And we'll see you at the next episode of Leaders Living Their Values. Take care, everyone.
Thanks again. Mitchell. Always a